Today, I want to share with you the birth story of my first baby. I've watched so many birthing stories. Watching a variety of experiences helped me stay calm and confident through mine. So I hope this video adds to your confidence of the power that you're capable of. This is a story about sticking to your vision and advocating for yourself, even when things are out of your control. For context, I am 6 months postpartum. I spent a lot of time prepping for birth, not realizing that the first 6 weeks postpartum was going to be the hardest experience of my life. The birth itself was a deeply empowering and spiritual experience, and I use the word spiritual consciously because I would never use that word to describe anything before. So let's talk about my vision of birth. My vision of birth was to have a water birth with minimal to no interventions. I wanted to experience nature's evolutionary process in its entirety. I wanted to take birth as an immersion into creation, our natural wildness, and connect to all of the mothers that came before me. The pregnancy itself was smooth and complication-free all the way up until week 38 and a half. At week 38 and a half, the midwife told me that I had high blood pressure and it needed to be monitored. I was not alarmed by this information because there is high blood pressure in my family. Well, I've gone this far without having it, so, we're good. She wanted me back in 3 days for another checkup. So at this point, I was at the hospital because my midwife had another appointment with somebody who was giving birth. My husband and I were pretty optimistic. We are generally optimistic people. We thought it would be a lovely opportunity to take a tour.
Where are we?
Midwifery care unit.
Why?
My blood pressure's high.
So with multiple high blood pressure readings, I had to be transferred care to our OBGYN, who I had never met before. I knew that transferring care to staff that were heavily medically trained, they would naturally lean on the medical way of doing things, which for me was the opposite of what I wanted.
I took a second pill. My blood pressure didn't go down with the first one.
So here we took 2 blood pressure pills. The first pill I took was labetalol, and then they gave me Adalat or nifedipine, I believe. And I think I took 5 milligrams and then another 5 milligrams, slow acting one, and then a fast acting one. My blood pressure at different times was this. I'm sharing this for information. We did 2 rounds of blood tests. The goal of the blood test was to look at liver enzymes and my kidney function.
So my kidney's not working well. And they also found elevated levels of liver enzymes, or LFTs as they call it. They're saying probably best to induce. And if this pill doesn't help bring my blood pressure down, they're suggesting a C-section. Both of which are not exactly what I wanted, but here we are.
This is when I found out that I was also dealing with preeclampsia. At this point, I was taken aback. So there was a lot of fear being induced by the doctors. The doctors were recommending that I stay. They were telling me that if I leave, I was at the risk of literally having a seizure or fainting or dying. That's not something you want to hear ever, but that's definitely not something you want to hear when your blood pressure is high. I can laugh about it now, but when it was happening, it was very, very jarring and scary. And I remember feeling a complete loss of control, not having enough information, and furiously Googling to try to understand what this meant for me, instead of focusing on breathing and focusing on all the things that I know to work. So 11:01 p.m., my blood pressure is at 120/80. It is settled. They did a check at that point and I was 1 centimeter dilated. At this point, it was very close to midnight and way past my bedtime. So at midnight, I decided to go home despite doctors' recommendations for me to stay. They wanted to induce me right then and there. I knew from all of my prep work beforehand that when you're under medical care, things can escalate very quickly. It was difficult news to digest, especially difficult when I had to go home that night and try to sleep so that the next morning I could go in for an induction. So at this point, we were 1 day away from 39 weeks, or maybe 2 days away from 39 weeks. I was also quite over being so big and heavy. And again, I didn't know what postpartum was going to be like. In hindsight, I could have waited it out. that's not the route I went. That's not the story this one is. So let's keep going, shall we? I tried to sleep knowing that I could potentially have a seizure or faint or die. My husband and I had already chatted beforehand, and we had decided that if there was ever a situation where we had to pick between baby and mom, we would pick mom. I'm glad that we did have that discussion because we were now in a moment where the baby was completely healthy. Everything was going well with baby, but mom was at risk, aka me. The only way that I can really talk about it without crying is to talk about myself in third person so that I distance myself a little bit. So induction was, it's like, hey, we have to get the baby out. Going from low risk to high risk this late in the pregnancy really messed with my mind. It was like I did something wrong and I could have been more diligent about it to prevent it. Looking back, having a doula would have helped me with continuity. And research shows the more you surround yourself with people you trust, the easier it is for you to open up to the process of childbirth. The next day, I would go through the process of experiencing what natural birth without pain meds while having Pitocin would feel like. Now, according to the research, when you are under Pitocin, which is synthetic oxytocin, the surges are more painful. Now, because I don't have any experience with birth prior to this, I didn't have a threshold of pain that I was going to be expecting. I was going in completely open to the experience. And I think because of that, I was able to tell myself that the pain is coming with a purpose and this is bringing my baby further down into my body. So I was telling myself that this is the pain of childbirth. I talk about the importance of sleep on this channel so much and I practice what I preach. So I was so glad that I went home for a sleep, even though it wasn't the best sleep, it was sleep. We woke up to get back to the hospital with renewed hope. We had optimism, but we did not have excitement. Excitement was difficult to find because this path that we were entering now, it was not according to plan.
How did it escalate so quickly?
Pregnancy vlog number 5.
Okay, so you're gonna feel pressure from below, okay, and that is speculum.
So now what happens is the Foley is inside. We are going to inflate it with water. So that's what she's doing now. So you feel a lot of cramping just because it's inside your cervix now.
Does it feel crampy? Do you feel anything?
Okay.
Yeah. I feel some pressure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel cramping now.
We tried our best to rest as much as possible because we knew childbirth could be a marathon.
12:40 p.m. Blood pressure is finally normal. They, I believe, want to put oxytocin, the drip, even though the Foley's still in me. So they're trying to do it simultaneously just to get things moving. They're not trying to get me to a C-section, but that's last resort. So that's really, really reassuring because that was my worry that we're gonna do all of these things and then everything's gonna be elevated and then they're gonna be like, oh, let's do a C-section. We gotta eat before the oxytocin goes in because if we do end up in a C-section, apparently you could regurgitate your food or something and then you could choke on it and die. So liquids only after oxytocin goes in.
And then we increase it every 30 minutes by 2.
You have a lot of time to, kind of think things through and be with your own thoughts.
The staff agreed to periods of no monitoring so that we could walk around and help the baby move further down. Shortly after, the nurse yanked out the Foley and my mucus plug came out with it.
It's almost 5 and we just broke the water. We've got 12 units of Pitocin, and so if we break the water then I don't need as much Pitocin because it really kickstarts labor.
How did it feel?
The checks are honestly not comfortable at all. There's a lot of pressure and it just it goes really deep. Discomfort, my body's trying to push away but I'm trying to breathe and be open. And then when the water broke, it was quite warm. It's not a big gush. It's half a cup of water that came out. There's still water in there, I think, and it's just gonna keep trickling as the baby starts to descend. Baby's in station -3, they said, so it's not quite engaged in my pelvis yet, so we still got a ways to go.
I had written this little note in my notes app. Now at 3 centimeters dilated, with my water manually broken, and on 12 units of Pitocin, I'm starting to feel renewed hope again. Like today or tomorrow is the day I meet my baby. It's exciting. I welcome the pain. And I really did welcome the pain. I was 3 centimeters dilated and 1 centimeter long, which was an improvement from 3 centimeters dilated and 3 centimeters long. So essentially that length of my cervix was thinning. My cervix was thinning. I think I was just trying to understand, like, what's the height of the pain? Like, where is it going to, crescendo? Then I look back at my notes app and all I have written is holy, and that's the last entry I had, because the pain really kicked up and I was in a trance. I was, eyes closed, feeling everything that was happening within my body, changing positions every 30 minutes at the least. So the pain came in waves or surges. It was like a wrenching and splitting open type of pain. So my hip bones ached. I still remember what that felt like for my hips specifically. It felt like the muscles around my hips were just ripping. I rocked a lot back and forth. I changed positions often. I moaned deeply. I breathed in through my nose, breathed out through my mouth. Having practiced calming breathing techniques beforehand really helped me so much. I was hooked on to 2 monitors, one for the baby's heart rate and then one to measure like the contractions and the waves. Having a monitor hooked up to you 24/7 is just, again, not ideal. Research suggests that this is not helpful because it limits the woman from moving. So even the nurses told me that I could move, but every time I moved, these bands would move and then we wouldn't get proper readings. So nurses would come into my room and say that, hey, you're not really having surges. And my husband's like, no, she's been having very consistent surges. I've been here the whole time. They were coming into the room, interrupting the process, always trying to move the bands up and down. And so it was really hindering me from moving. Move as much as you can. I think that was really what helped me get the baby to come out very quickly. The main form of pain relief that I had was breathing techniques. I have an entire video on my other channel, For Your Breath, if you're interested to practice some of these breathing techniques. Along with the breathing techniques, what I did was add 2 words. One was the word open and the other was the word surrender. So I am not a type of person who surrenders to things. I'm very much in control of my life and in control of my choices. So surrendering was this new word and emotion and feeling that I had to sit in. So first, open. I think telling your body to open, loosening everything, feeling your pelvic floor open, feeling your heartbeat slow, feeling your breath slow, all of that really helped bring the word open to life. And I would say the word open when I was at the peak of my surge, and the deep resonance of my voice helped keep me calm.
We also tried visualization techniques paired with breathing. It did help quite a bit.
And to learn to speak up and ask questions if it is ever important for you to do so. The energy from the blue mist teaches you to speak clearly and with confidence about your birthing wishes and your dream of how you will bring your baby.
When the pain was too high during a surge, it quickly became annoying.
Surrender was the word that made me feel spiritual. There was a moment I remember where I put my hands behind my back when a surge was coming, and then I just lifted my pelvic floor up to the ceiling. My eyes were closed. My eyes were closed for majority of the back half. Saying surrender, it's a baton. You're passing the control away. So for me, I was passing the control to the universe. I was passing the control to creation itself, this energy of birth. And by passing the baton, I felt comforted and almost like a blanket of like, we got you. You're going to do this. It was wonderful. It was wonderful, very painful, but wonderful.
I ultimately did end up eating. My body needed the energy, and it felt unnecessarily restraining to limit its fuel.
So Pitocin was at the highest dosage of 20 units. The doctor came in and mentioned that she had gotten approval to increase the Pitocin even higher to 26 units. I declined that because at 20 units of Pitocin, the surges were quite frequent. They were coming back to back, and I was at the height of pain, so I did not want any more pain. I was like, this level of pain I could handle. At certain points when you think like, oh, I don't know if I can do this anymore. And I knew from watching other birthing videos that that's exactly how most women feel when they're reaching this moment of, I don't think I can do this anymore. That's when they're super close to birth. They can do it, right? We've reached our max. There were moments where I was like, Tim, please remind me again why I don't want an epidural. So not wanting an epidural for me was all backed in science. It was another thing, another intervention that could lead to further interventions. I think medicine has come a long way, and I think for women who do want pain relief, it is a fantastic option. I kept telling myself that this pain is not to be feared. This pain comes with a purpose. Women are magical and fantastic beings. So right now I'm reading this book, The Great Cosmic Mother, and it is connecting me to womanhood and creation and being this magical producer being like never before. How are women doing this all the time? So 1:30 a.m. there was another cervical check. At this time I was 5 centimeters dilated. Pain was intense, and I was really disappointed to find out that I was only at 5 centimeters because I knew that it could be another, 10, 18 hours before baby comes out. I went from 5 centimeters dilated to baby out in 3 hours. This side note is for anybody who's part of the medical establishment. Please, please, please support the birthing woman with all of her requests as close as possible, along with the requests of their advocating partner, even if it's a male. So in this case, it was my husband. I saw our requests being continually denied, even though we were very firm on what we wanted. We had to fight for it because we kept getting rebuttals from nurses. And when I am in a state of surges and pain, my husband would speak up for me, and he was my chosen advocacy partner, but he was ignored. In fact, we were talked down to as if we didn't have all of our information. And so we had to consistently prove that we did have our information, and what we wanted was from a place of knowledge. What I'm noticing is that there is a heavy reliance on policies and risk reduction. And that is detaching us and taking us away from nature's process, which is well rehearsed. I felt so connected to my body and to nature, while the establishment around me kept trying to pull me out of it by interrupting the energy in the room, having excess monitoring, downplaying me and my partner's requests, offering medical procedures that we had already declined, handing out paperwork. I mean, the process of coming in and out of flow was the hardest for me. I was on my knees when my body had an involuntary shake, and it felt like a shiver, and I felt my body push. Even though I'd never experienced childbirth before, I very well knew that this was the ejection reflex. It was my body pushing baby out. It was happening. And so I said, the baby's coming. I was introduced to a male doctor that I had not met before. Again, unwanted, unwelcome, but that was what happened. So at this point, I went from my knees, laid down onto my side because the doctor wanted to check me again. And it's very difficult to keep saying no. Eventually you will wear out. And that's what happened to me at this point. It was about 4:30 a.m. I moved to my side. I did a check, and the doctor confirmed that the baby was coming out. And I was told that the baby's heart rate was dropping, and I was advised to push with all my might instead of waiting for the ejection reflex. So one more time, I had to go against nature's way. So I tried my best to stay present in this moment, and breathe a very deep breath in and push out with these deep groans. I pushed over 4 surges and the baby was out. So immediately after birthing, I was communicating with the doctor about the placental delivery. The doctor did not ask for consent at this point and started pushing on my belly, which actually was quite painful. So I requested that they stop pushing on my belly and just wait for the placenta to deliver. I believe the placenta was being tugged at. They were following their process and procedure, and they were not really willing to hear what my preference was going to be. We also asked for the umbilical cord to be cut after it had stopped pulsating, and the doctor said, yes, we will wait for 1 minute. While talking to the doctor of saying like, yes, please freeze me while you stitch me down there, I had a 2nd-degree tear, I believe. I realized that I hadn't even said hello to my baby who was lying on my chest. So I said, let me take a good look at you. And that was the first thing that I said to my baby. He looked weird. He looked like an alien, like a big gray poop. It was relieving to hold him in my arms and just have him there. And then we tried breastfeeding for the first time.
Now, looking back with a healthy baby and a smooth recovery, I am happy I was able to connect deeply with my body and have a new appreciation for nature's wisdom.
And that is where I will end this video. Please share your own stories with me. I would love to read them. And then if you have any questions, thoughts, or feelings that have come up, I would also love to hear those. So yeah, cheers to being a new mom. Onward. Bye.